our Almighty God, Creator of heaven and earth, Father and lover of our soul, you sit on your throne of mercy and rule with your love and faithfulness. You are full of grace. We acknowledge your presence in our lives. Nothing is hidden in your eyes, even our challenges and struggles in life. We come to you with faith. We ask not only for our daily spiritual bread, but to seek your forgiveness and undeserving favor to heal our land, our family members, our friends and neighbors, even our enemies with COVID-19 and other diseases. Holy Spirit, help us to deepen our faith and see the opportunity to believe, obey, and worship. As we face this pandemic, you are Lord and God. Encourage us and change our hearts, not to fear, but to be full of hope and find ourselves praying and meditating your word. We believe no works of the enemy prosper to your children. Abba, Father, we believe that your Son Jesus Christ is Lord and Savior. He is the truth and our salvation. Hear our prayers, O Lord, and most of all, not our will, but thy will be done. We pray this in Jesus' name, the name above all names, who was and is to come. Amen.
Naghahatid saya sa mga Pinoy, mga kanta at programang Tatak Pinoy. Napapanood at napapakinggan kahit saan ka man. Streaming worldwide. In South Manila, this is V81 Radio.
Malayo ka man sa iyong pamilya, dito ay hindi ka nag-iisa. Tiyak ito'y iyong hahanap-hanapin, dahil ito ang nagpapasaya sa atin. Ito'y mapapakinggan.
Radio.
The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the program anchors and producers and do not necessarily reflect the policies and position of this station. Discover the best kept secrets in metaphysics, law of attraction, science, and spirituality, and listen to practical mystics from around the world. Let's open Pandora's box with Reverend Reg Stan, your metaphysical minister, here in Practical Magic, your practical mystic source, only here on V81 Radio, Manila.
Everyone. I am Reverend Reg, and I'm here again for another episode of Practical Magic, where we talk about metaphysics, science, spirituality, and how we can actually transform ourselves, changing our limited patterns of thinking in such a way that it will empower us for our further growth and expansion. One thing that I want to share with all of you, we've gotten so used to acting and living from our patterns in the past without really coming to the realization that we have a bigger potential to actually fulfill. And I want to share that this week we're actually talking about how I personally was able to overcome my limited patterns of thinking, especially before I came out to my family. And we're also going to talk about important family upbringing and the culture that really affects our life as we become adults. So before we start, I want to invite everyone to simply close your eyes and take a deep breath in and out. Take a deep breath in and out. Take a deep breath in and out. And I want you all to rub both palms vigorously and just give yourself a big hug, because I know that so many of us have been under lockdown and we're all trying to practice social distancing. Something as simple as that can actually help us become more connected to our higher selves. So, aside from that, I want to invite you all to affirm this with me. I love myself for all that I was, all that I am, and all that I want to become. I am worthy because God made me so. I love myself for all that I was, all that I am, and all that I want to become. I am worthy because God made me so. I love myself for all that I was, all that I am, and all that I want to become. I am worthy because God made me so. And feel that lightness in your heart, that inner smile from your heart, and gently open your eyes. All right. Sat down again. So tonight I want to introduce everyone to my colleague in the International Metaphysical Ministry, and she has also guested in my show several times. So I want to share a brief background of her. Reverend Sheila has a compassionate drive to help others. Her mission is to help others release, heal, and evolve. Sharing her own life experience testimony of self healing is her passion. She believes we have the ability to heal and profoundly change. She is a heart activator and knows every heart has an answer. Her intention is to support people in experiencing and embracing deep and profound love for themselves, assisting others on their path for wholeness, and discovering that self love is that power that transforms everything. She is an educator and trainer in energy practices and energy psychology teaching, changing conscious belief system into empowerment living. She can also help to remove blocks in your energy field, balance and cleanse your chakras, uncover patterns of limited beliefs, help learn techniques for building personal resilience against stress, and help guide you to move forward on your personal spiritual empowerment path. Without further ado, let's welcome Reverend Sheila Tillich.
Thank you.
Satnam, Satnam, Reverend. How are you today?
Oh, I am awesome. Very well, thank you.
Awesome. I'm so excited because we just let this week pass, and I was invited by our colleague, Reverend Tina Brinkley Potts, to be part of her Happy, Healthy, and Whole Summit. And part of that uh, summit was for me to talk about my coming out to the family, or what was my limited belief in the past, especially in terms of my religious upbringing. So I know it wasn't really easy for me to come out. That was 18 years ago. But the amazing thing is, 18 years later, I know a lot of the breaks that I'm experiencing now, especially in my career. I'm able to experience this with a lot ease and grace because I took the time to actually, look into what was blocking me before. So I want to know, Reverend Sheila, what's your take on the LGBTQ community? Because I know there's also a growing number of people who are coming out to their families in the States, and there's actually more LGBTQ communities in your area.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I absolutely love embracing everybody, but especially the gay people, because it's a label, and a lot of them, are experience a lot of prejudice, and in their workplace, of course, in their home life. And it's sad, is because they're no different than anybody else. And it's just a label. Labels, I don't like labels. Well, it's mostly a label.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Reverend Sheila. And honestly, in the past, a couple of years ago, not everybody had that perception where they were tolerant of gay people. In fact, I know that my family, they always made me feel that they were doing their best. But of course, naturally, because they also have to deal with people outside the family who would also talk about issues like this, it wasn't easy for them to actually move past that kind of thinking of the limiting beliefs. So for you, did you have any family member who was part of the LGBTQ community, and how did your family take it?
I'm sorry. Can you say that question again? I had a hard time
Yeah.
hearing.
Did you have any family member who was also part of the LGBTQ community, and how did the members of your family react to it?
Yes, I did, and I still do. And it wasn't easy for them, and they weren't accepted right away. And matter of fact, my niece, who also lives a gay life, and she's very happy, and I love her to death, and I'm very respectful for her, and I love how she stood in her sacred truth, who she really is. But it was really hard from other family members that was still stuck in the old tradition, still stuck in their old ways. And it was sad because they weren't accepted. She wasn't accepted. Her lifestyle wasn't accepted. I also had a sister that was bisexual, and she passed away in 2008, and that wasn't very well received either. And it was hard for all of us, but mostly for them. And when I look back at it now, it's like they didn't know, my family and a lot of other people didn't realize what they were doing, and they were continuing with those labels of a person. My niece, all right, is very happy, and I'm very proud of her. And I've always known that she was unique. That's the whole key. And she was who she was. And it didn't matter what her sexual orientation or how she lived her life. I still was going to love her. But it was hard. It was hard in the family. It was hard because old beliefs are embedded in you, the old programming, and it was sad, but it was true. And it wasn't just our family. It was many families, but it also not just about being gay. We had a lot of secrets behind our doors. A lot of secrets behind our doors. And the whole key is that you don't tell the secrets behind the doors, because it's shameful. It's shameful.
Exactly.
It's shameful. And that's the way that they were brought up, and so I have a lot of thought in comments on that one.
Yeah, it's really refreshing when I converse with you. I know how well you know what you know because of the dynamic information that you're always sharing with me and the rest of our audience. And I just know that what you're talking about really comes from your heart space
Oh, absolutely.
because both of us constantly go over how our beliefs were shaped and at the same time our personal beliefs, the beliefs that we get from our guardians, our parents, our uncles, people who have influenced us, our school, our religion. And especially, I want to highlight on what you mentioned about traditions. So, my God, and we know that when you talk about traditions, it's just so difficult to change that because apparently, for most people, they find it so blasphemous in a way to break traditions in the family, especially if it goes against religious beliefs.
Oh, yes.
So please share with us, Reverend Sheila, because I'm sure that our audience is also interested to know what is it about traditions, especially religious beliefs, that actually affect the expansion of a person's life, their
Oh,
sense of peace, their sense of joy, and their career success.
well, I share a lot of my life stories is because it's important for other people to know that they're not alone. And throughout my whole childhood, I lived with tradition and I lived with shame and I lived with a lot of different things. Both my parents were alcoholics, active alcoholics. And that type of lifestyle was really hard. And we also was very strong Christians. We belonged to a Catholic church. Our family, were church going people, but it was really hard as a child to see this is because in my heart, I knew that there was more to life than what I was living. And
Mhm.
because I do have a connection with the angels and divinely, it was like I was living in a dream when I look back at it now. But it wasn't a dream; it was survival. And my childhood was very inbred with traditions. You go to church on Sunday, you don't eat meat on Fridays, and it was the dichotomy for me. Seeing it, my parents would live a certain way and they would act a certain way, a different way. And it's like it didn't make any sense, but they were just following what they were taught, you know.
Mhm.
And it was sad because as I have grown into the wise woman that I am now, and a very strong belief in my divineness, I understand now how that happened, and I'm
Mhm.
very grateful for that. Is because I do have that background, right,
Yeah.
of tradition, and you don't go against tradition. And these are the things that'll happen to you being controlled if you go
Yeah.
against the traditions, and it's
Yeah.
like having your own brain and thinking wasn't allowed. You had to be, you had to dress a certain way, you had to pretend a certain way. So, you know, any labels that you have, is it's not healthy for people to always go by tradition, meaning it hurts the person if they can't be who they truly are. If they have
Exactly.
if they have people that are trying to control them, and it's really about control. And when you hear that word, it's like, what do you mean? Well, think about it. It is about not breaking the normal routine, because you're going to stand out. You're going to make people look bad, and that's the whole key. Is that you don't want to tell the skeletons behind the door because of the shame involved. And there's so much about it, Reg, that I can go on and on and on about it. But the label of being gay in
Mhm.
society, you know,
Mhm.
is not right, and it's not right. But it was taught to them. It was taught, this is the way you do it. And what is wonderful now is that now we are able to come out behind the doors. We're
Yes.
able to live our life and actually be who we are. And you know, would you like me to continue about my own life? And
Yeah, go ahead, please.
so,
I
okay, so
okay.
uh, um, as I said, I came from a home where both my parents were alcoholics, and it was hard because I didn't have a childhood, and I had to, because of those traditions, I had to perform the way that they wanted me to perform instead of being who I was. And I learned that in my childhood is that you do this because if you don't, this is what's going to happen. The shame and the control of a child is sad. And when I look back now, being in energy psychology, and the first 7 years of a child's life is so important. It's so important, and it's embedded with what's going to happen for the rest of their life, how they're going to live their lives. And for me, I needed to go through all that change and growth in myself to see what my life's purpose is now. But when I was a child, I lived in shame. I didn't want to tell anybody, that my parents were alcoholics, even though they knew on the outside, because they knew is because the cops would be at the door when my father would be beating us all up or beating up my mother. This is real stuff. This is real stuff. And, the shame of my mother, all right, had a child out of wedlock. Oh my God. When she married my father. And that was not cool back then. Or, sometimes it still isn't now. The shame and the tradition still comes into play.
Yeah.
And but I never realized how bad it shaped my life. And bad, what I mean is a negative way. However, now I look at now and I'm very grateful for it. Is because they didn't know what they didn't know. They didn't know any different. That's what they were brought up with.
Yeah.
So my childhood is that I hid what was really going on from my friends, and I started drinking myself at a young age. And it wasn't until 25 years later when I really took a look at that and realized I did that so I could survive. I did that in the psychosocial realm. When you think of what you were taught how to live your lives, you're just like little robots. You don't want to upset the apple cart. You don't want to make waves, so you go along like everybody else. But I hid it that I was a good girl. I wasn't drinking like my parents, and that was really hard to do because I felt their pain, and I knew that I had my own pain, and so that's how I dealt with it. But nobody knew it, because the worst thing for me was that I was going to be an alcoholic like my mother. All right. And so in reality, that's exactly what happened. But I was in so much pain, not understanding that being an alcoholic was not a shameful thing. It was just how I dealt with stress and the reality of it,
Yeah.
and that it didn't make me, and that I had to be who I was, just like in my spirituality now. I have the Christian background. I have the Catholic home life. I have the Catholic upbringing. And I know I'm going off topic, but I think I need to bring this forward.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. I used to be a church secretary, and Lutheran church secretary. Matter of fact, I changed from Catholicism to Lutheran when I had my daughter 30 some odd years ago. And that was because it was just, it wasn't comfortable for me in the Catholic faith. But as I have grown into a metaphysical minister and the things I do, I still run into people that knew me back then. And they would say, I would meet them in a store, and they would say, "Oh my goodness, Sheila, I haven't seen you in a long time. What are you doing now? And what church are you going to?" That was the first question, not with "What are you doing now?" type thing. It was, "What? Oh my God, I haven't seen you." And it's like, well, I really don't worship anywhere, because they said, "Where do you worship now?" And I says, well, I don't go anyplace. I says, I'm a metaphysical minister, and I says, and I worship God. God is all around me. It's inside my heart. I have to go, and they said, "Oh my God, I will pray for you," type thing. And they kind of like, they did one of these things, and they backed away from me, and I said, "Oh, thank you. Please pray for me. I need all the prayers I can get. Don't we all, And it was so funny, but how it was such a terrible thing to be in metaphysics and not in Christianity. It's the brainwashing They don't
Yeah.
know. They don't know. That's the whole key. And I'm talking like an Italian, but I'm not. What another lifetime it could have been. But I was Irish background. Very. We call it They call it the CIA, Catholic, Irish, and alcoholic. CIA. So, but anyway, what as the years have gone by, I look back at my childhood. I look back at all the traditions. I look back at how I had to behave, or I wasn't going to be accepted. I wasn't going to be loved. And oh my gosh, I'm going to go to hell. That was the biggest.
Yes.
I was
My
going to go to
gosh.
hell. I was going to go to hell. Oh my God. And that was one of the biggest things is like, oh my God, I don't want to burn in hell. But I knew that wasn't right. I knew in my soul that wasn't right. So I continued, on my evolution to who I am now. But it's very hard for children when they're brought up in that lifestyle, is because it impacts their life for the rest of their life. That if they don't conform and do what their loved ones do, then they're not going to be accepted. They're not going to be loved.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
They're not going to be loved. And, God loves everybody, and we're all his children. We're all divine, and we all have our own life's purpose. But childhood trauma, childhood traditions, and traditions are a good thing. Now, they're a very good thing when you think about that. Respect, loyalty, compassion. What's most important is love. It's not about money. It's not about what you do and where you go. It's about love in the true essence. And that's what I reflect on now as a woman, but as also a wise woman. What's most important is about love.
Mhm.
It's not about the things that you do or the things that you have, and it's about love and how you live your life, and it's about compassion. And so my childhood comes into play a lot when I see people that are over medicating, or to deal with the pain that they have inside, is because
Yes.
they don't feel that they have any other choices.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up, Reverend Sheila. And I love that you talked about medication, because we know that a lot of us, we go through certain limited situations in life, mostly because of our awakening experience, and not necessarily because we're biologically sick. Because we know that if you feel very limited in your thinking and the way you're feeling about certain situations or people in your life, it will have to manifest in your body. But if you learn spiritual tools like forgiveness and energetically releasing people and circumstances in your life that are no longer serving your highest good, that's no longer part of your awakening experience, because we're constantly evolving, then we know that you're going to maintain a happier biochemistry and a healthier physical body. So please share more about uh, what you just mentioned earlier about realizing that people can be in the space where they're over medicating unnecessarily.
Oh, absolutely. Well, when I actually got myself in recovery, so fast forward to my childhood, it took over 25 years before I finally did something about myself. And what I learned really astonished me. At first they said it was a disease. Alcoholism was a disease. I always thought it was a weakness.
Mhm.
And then I thought my parents, were it was terrible. Why didn't they just wake up? Why do they do the things they did? But they didn't know any different. And when I actually took a look at it and realized that it was such an awakening for me, that was my turning point. My alcoholism, actually getting something, getting into recovery, but learning things about myself, why I did the things I did. And it really stopped me from living my divine life. Fast forward to where I'm at now, I can pick up very quickly in somebody what is actually going on, because I also am a medium, an evidential medium. I do all that stuff too, but I feel the pain. I feel the hurt. I feel, and I come from the love aspect, and I can pick up on that. And what they do to deal with that pain is just a cover up. It's not really who they are, and it limits you from finding out who you are. Just like they say, and I know that when you start drinking, you stop developing emotionally. All right, at that time, and it's true. It's true that way, you know. So I always say that I grew up in AA, you know, because I didn't know who I was. I didn't know who I was. And, you know, I started in Al-Anon, but it took me 8 years later, you know, for the people that listened to this program before, I did talk about that a little bit. I got in recovery in 85 for Al-Anon because of those things that were not working for me. I was very unhappy. I had no joy. And I knew intuitively that I needed to do something about myself. And I did it because of my children. Is that I seen the pain in their eyes that I had when I looked at my parents. And so I intuitively knew that I had to take action and do something. So as I did take action, and then I started realizing that my parents weren't bad people at all. And they say they're sick people. Not so much sick people, but their thinking, the way that they dealt with life was to pick up alcohol. That's the only way they could survive, because they didn't know how to live in their true essence, who they were. However, what I did learn is, and when I look back at it now, I learned to have compassion. I really did. You know, I learned to love and nurture people unconditionally. And that's the whole key. It has nothing to do with, you know, their belief and what they do. It has to do with just being a human soul and putting the love out there.
Thank you for sharing that, Reverend Sheila. And I want to follow up on what you just mentioned, because when you knew that your children were in pain and you know you had to do something about it, we both know that when one decides to actually go through a personal growth journey, you begin changing beliefs which are no longer serving your expansion. And normally, people who are close to us may not resonate with the change that's happening. And because you were married, how did your husband take it?
Not good, not good. He was my drinking partner. All right. And the only thing that really was, and the only thing that we really had in common was drinking and working. We were both workaholics. You know, we didn't have a relationship. I mean, an intimate relationship. What I mean by a oneness with God. And I always knew that we got married because that's what you did. Back in the 70s, that's what you did. And I married to get out of the house. All of us did. All of us did. Get out of the house, get out of the environment. But I didn't know that wherever I was going, there I was. I took all my behaviors. Hold on a second. Excuse me. I took all my behaviors and my life issues with me. All right, in the relationship. And when God was speaking with me, and when I finally decided to do something, is when I knew that alcoholism was a generational disease, meaning my children were going to have probably the same problems, is because this is all they learned. All right. I was an example for them. And so I needed to take action. And it was hard for my ex-husband, is because he wanted it. He didn't want anything to change, you know, and I knew that there was more to my life in who God really made me, and that the things that how we were living was limiting me. You know, I wasn't happy. I wasn't joyful. And I didn't like having the big elephant in the middle of my living room and ignoring it. You know, something had to change. And my children were seeing that. Just like when I seen in my parents, they would do one thing and say the other. You know, don't smoke. They're sitting there smoking. Don't drink, and they're drinking. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. So I had to take the action. And when I took the action is when I started really opening my eyes to a lot of things. And it was limiting me from being joyful. It was limiting me from finding my true purpose. And my ex-husband was not comfortable because I changed the apple cart. I changed everything, you know, but it had to be. It had to be. And I know that now, and you can see it. And I always say, take the wisdom that you learned and use that for your future.
Thank you for sharing that, Reverend Sheila. And now that we're on the subject of transformation, and you know that it's it's like you're in this space where there's so much inertia. You're wanting to really change and move forward, and then our loved ones can actually hold us back from our expansion. It can happen a lot, so many times. I've seen a lot of people where they take the first step towards the direction of change, but they're not really able to take the next steps forward because their loved ones are holding them back. And we'll talk more about it later. For now, we'll take a short commercial break.
We'll be back shortly. This is Practical Magic, your practical mystic source. Only here on V81 Radio, Manila. Connected ka na ba para laging updated sa mga bagong shows, promos, trending news, viral videos, events, o patok na OPM hits? Just follow us on Facebook at V81 Radio Manila. Simple lang, itype lang ang letter V81 Radio Manila. O, di ba madali lang? Kaya i-like at i-follow na.
You've deployed the perfect video conferencing room solution. With calendar integration and touch control, internal meetings start with a tap. But sometimes, video meetings are scheduled on other services. And now people are asking how to use these rooms for external meetings and webinars. Here's the answer: Logitech Switch. Logitech Switch makes it easy for people to use your rooms with any video meeting service. With a single USB-A or C connection, anyone can link their laptop to the meeting room's display and conference camera. No extra cables or adapters required. The room stays tidy, secure, and ready for both internal and external meetings. In rooms with or without a dedicated PC, Switch gives people the freedom to meet, present, and stream on any service. Ready for every meeting. That's Logitech Switch.
Now back to Practical Magic, your practical mystic source. Only here on V81 Radio, Manila.
Satam, everyone. I'm back again for Practical Magic. I'm your host, Reverend, and right now we're talking about transforming our lives and making sure that we're taking all the steps necessary to move forward, even if sometimes our loved ones, our closest friends, or family members are not in alignment with our decision to move forward, because it will help us expand and grow, and at the same time increase our inner peace and our sense of well-being and joy. So back to you, Reverend Sheila. Let's talk about your resolve to actually move forward, because we both know that our loved ones, as much as they inspire us, if they're not ready for your decision to change your life, it can be a concern.
Absolutely. It's very much a big concern. Um, but you've got to realize that if you don't change, things can get worse. And it did get worse with me. It got very worse. And that's why I giggle. A lot of people ask, how come you stayed so long? And a lot of times it was because I didn't have any choice, because I wasn't ready. I had too much fear. I had too much pain, and I wasn't strong enough yet. So I had to deal with all those things, why I was in the relationship in the first place, why I was so unfulfilled inside, and I had to deal with my pain before I could leave, and it was fear. It was fear, security. And a lot of people do that. They don't change, or they don't come out of denial who they really are, because of fear and because of tradition and because of what will happen. They won't be accepted and loved.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that, Reverend Sheila. And I want to go back to what you said, especially about security. Especially when people talk about the subject of financial security, it's something that most people are not able to move forward and transform their lives, because let's face it, it's one of the basic things we're all dealing with to be financially secure, and a lot of people are held back if they're not financially secure, and then they're going to transform their lives, especially if that means transforming your life by yourself without the support of your partner. So
Yeah.
did your transformation include that you will also have to fend for yourself, because naturally you were here, I'm sure you were paying for personal development courses, and it may not be a priority for your partner back then, and you didn't probably understand why you were paying for those courses.
Oh no. He did not like me evolving, changing. He was threatened by it. You know, as I said, it wasn't a healthy relationship, and I knew that. But I stayed because I had no choice, and I wasn't ready. My metaphysical background happened many years before. Learning in books. In when you're in AA, you have different readings that you do. A lot of spiritual books, a lot of spiritual leaders. One of my best leaders was Wayne Dyer and Marianne Williamson, who were also came from recovery programs too, about the spiritual part, about the metaphysical part. And so, with my husband was very threatened by that, by education, you know, because he wasn't going to be able to control me anymore. So he did not like my books. He did not like me reading. He did not like me changing, and that's when things really got ugly and abusive. And that's why I couldn't leave. I had no way of leaving, you know. And I was a good traditional Catholic wife. You know, I married because this is what you do, and you stay in the marriage no matter what. But I was so unhappy, and I knew I had to get out, but I had no way of doing it. So that's why it took so many years. I had to grow. Finally, I was able to get a job and to start putting money away. I mean, a lot of things that I had to do. But the thing is that some people don't have the support. I didn't have the support. I had support on the outside with people that were helping me move forward. But as far as my ex-husband, it was very hard on him, which I understand, and I get it. And what people, I always say this, this phrase. Many years I was growing and I was changing. I was seeing things about myself, but I had so much compassion for him and love for him as a human. You know, maybe not so much as far as the relationship, as far as the bonding between a husband and wife, but I had so much compassion for him that I stayed. And I would get right to the part where I was going to leave, and then something would happen, and then I would go back. And I call that going 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But also my friends used to talk about, you know, you have a horse and he's dead, and you beat him up and you buried him. And then all of a sudden you unbury him, and then you beat him up some more, and then you bury him again. And it was really about me. It was about me. I didn't know how to grow and go forward. And what I was doing was I was doing the same thing over and over again. So I had to face my fears. And the fears is the biggest thing. And when you start to open up the avenue of education, you can't go back because it's in your brain. But it's also a thing that God was showing you need to move forward. And those are the gifts that you get. And also the realization that there's more to life out there.
Yeah.
But you have to do it. You have to take the responsibility in doing it, because you're not going to change. You're not going to be happy. And those limiting beliefs keeps you stuck. Your traditions, your beliefs, and your fears of moving forward keeps you stuck.
Thank you for sharing that, Reverend Sheila. I love that you talked about being happy. Apparently, so many people feel that happiness is a luxury. And a lot of people don't feel worthy of happiness. And we both know that if you really want to live a life that means fulfillment on the spiritual and the material level, you have to be a happy human being. So, can you please talk more about our spiritual heritage of being happy? Because apparently, a lot of people think that it's not part of our spiritual life to be happy.
Oh my God, it is so happy. And I think about going back as a child. That's the whole key, is to live our life through a child's eyes, and how joyful it was to be outside playing, how joyful it was to play tag or doing cartwheels or something like that. And life is about having joy and peace inside and seeing the beauty of life. Joy is the biggest thing, is to have a joyful life. And that's what God wants us to do.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Reverend Sheila. Especially, we know that we're all allowed to be enlightened and to awaken, even if that means being joyful, because most of us have been programmed that it's only through suffering that we can be enlightened.
Now
What's your take on it?
well, that's where we go back to, you stay stuck in something because that's the way it is, and you should have joy. Why don't you put a smile on your face? Well, if you're not happy, how can you put a smile on your face? If you're not happy with your life situation, how can you? It's like it's hiding behind the mask, and I call it hiding behind the mask. Right? When they always say you got to put a joyful smile on your face, pretend that you're happy. And that's not really what God wants you to do. And it's the peace inside that you have from your divineness, who you really are.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Especially, one of the things that I want to share with everyone, when we want to demonstrate certain things in our lives, especially about having a partner, for example, most people think that you're going to have to go through Tinder or other dating apps before you meet someone. But we know that although something like that might actually come along the process, but the most important thing is the inner work that needs to be done. So please tell us, Reverend Sheila, what we mean as healers by inner work, because for some people, this is actually a new concept. Before you attract a partner to yourself, then one of the most important things that you have to realize is not just about going to dating sites, but actually being in that vibration where you are open and receptive to attract a partner, where you're attracting someone who will add to your growth and expansion and not with your traumas.
Oh yeah. Well, that's about being a healthy person, and first you have to find out who you are first. And a lot of people don't know who they are, is because they've lived behind the mask. They've lived behind other people's expectations. And that's when I started talking about when I got into recovery, I finally started to grow up. I actually came alive, is because I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know how to love myself and honor myself and have respect for myself, to not allow abuse, not allow different things. It's hard for people who have never had the role models to do that. And
Yes.
you have to really take responsibility for that and have the joy inside. But those limiting beliefs of the fear and the resentment and the anger will keep you so stuck. It will keep you very unhealthy. To be able to attract a healthy relationship, that's really what we want. We don't want to be alone, right? We don't want to be alone. We want to have somebody to walk with us. But the key is to be able to have a relationship, be alone with yourself and be comfortable with it. Go into the serenity part of it, where you can connect with God on a very soul connection. And then you start to change inside. You start to see life with more joy. Your eyes become open to things that really matter. And it's not about materialistic things. And it's not about the crowd that you hang with. It's about being comfortable in your own skin.
Thank you for sharing that. That's so beautiful that you mentioned being comfortable in your own skin. Especially, it took a lot for me to be in the space where I can be comfortable about me being openly gay, and then learn to accept the fact that for some people, this is totally new, that someone is actually coming out in the open, in public, broadcasting. And the other day, because Reverend Tina included me in the Happy, Healthy, Whole Summit, I made a post there, and one of the taglines of that post was, being gay is not a sin. So apparently, for most people, I mean, to some people, it's still a taboo. So someone made a comment that, according to God's word and according to the Bible, being gay is not a sin, but he was saying that God loves the person but not the sin. What can you say about it, Reverend Sheila?
Well, that's a whole nother can of worms, but um, I I don't think we are sinners, because I don't really think a lot of things are sinful. In other words, it is about the duality of right and wrong, good and bad type thing. But that's how we in society have to look at it. And it's about your choices. It's not about, sinful deeds, and it's how you relate as a person. All right. So how do you go and steal from your neighbor? All right. Do you say lies, to make yourself look good? All these things that they don't want us to do. Are you loving? Love your neighbor as yourself. If you can't love yourself, how can you love your neighbor? And when you go back to the Bible, as far as the 10 Commandments, honor your parents, and that's pretty hard when you have these inner turmoil inside of being accepted, that if you don't do these things, you won't be accepted. And that's where the fear comes back into play. So sin is, it is a man-made word, but I don't believe it is about, being a bad person. I think it has to do with your choices that you make as a person. And that's what differentiate between sin and understanding your choices. But that's how the Bible's talked about. It's more of a control, and wonderful, wonderful things in the Bible, and it's about love, and it's about Jesus, and about, his love. And also, in the Old Testament, before Jesus even came, it's about love your neighbor as yourself. And a lot of people forget that all the other things come into play. All the
Yeah.
other materialistic things, and the mask and the cover up, instead of going inside and loving yourself first.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. It's amazing that when we talk about self love, especially, Valentine's Day is coming up. So
That's
apparently
a whole nother story.
it's a hallmark celebration, and then we know that a lot of people actually romanticize the whole Valentine's Day. But at the same time, as people who practice heart energy techniques for ourselves and sending it to the rest of the community, please share with us more about self love and what really is healthy self love, Reverend Sheila.
Oh, that's a big question. That's a big question. Self-love is understanding that some things have to change, and you have to do it. Self-love is standing up for yourself, telling the truth, not being, if you don't want to go someplace, say, I'm sorry, but I can't go, and a lot of people want you to go, and you have to make excuses. Is that really self-love? I don't believe so. Self-love is more of understanding what you need to do to take care of yourself, and then doing it. And those traps, those limitations, things you don't know how to self-love, is because you've always loved for somebody else. You've always done it for somebody else, not finding out who you are. And that's where it's important, to have the quiet time, to have, your relationship with God. Go within and ask for the wisdom, because the divineness is inside. Self-love is so important. And once you tap into that divineness with God, you start to feel the love inside your soul as God loved you. And that's the whole key of understanding what self-love is. Then you can actually outwardly share that. And it's hard to do when you're influenced by so many things. It's hard to be real, and a lot of times you're not comfortable with yourself. You're angry with yourself. So if you get in terms with, why am I angry? Why am I hurting? Why do I have resentment? You know, and why did I behave a certain way? And start to forgive yourself. And then look at your treasures that you really are. Look at the things that you have inside. Look at the, come from gratitude and appreciation.
Yes.
Gratitude and for your life and appreciation for things. Look at life through different glasses. All right. And they say, don't live your life through the rose-colored glasses. In other words, don't, take off those glasses and be real, and show your vulnerability, take the risk, and as you do that, you start to feel, I feel good. That was good. I'm not comfortable doing that, and so you start to build that self-trust and self-love inside,
Yes.
but first it's, I think, taking the time, going withinward and asking, what do I need to do to change? What is keeping me so in pain that I can't take that mask off and be who God wants me to be? And who am I really? That's where you go inside.
Yeah.
Go
Thank you
inside.
for sharing. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Reverend Sheila. This is such an amazing topic to expand on. But for now, we'll pause for a short commercial break.
Okay.
Back shortly. This is Practical Magic, your practical mystic source. Only here on V81 Radio, Manila. Pagpatak ng 7, dapat lahat nakatutok sa amin. Catch these programs at 7 p.m. Pacific Time. Talk Shop Asia Global, USA Edition, with Rolly Pagaspas and Rosario Cajucom Brad Perry. Home Not Alone, Sounds from Home, with Papa Gio. And Freedom in Christ, with Felsen. It's all about entrepreneurship, entertainment, and enlightenment. Back-to-back-to-back programs at 7. LA at 7. LA at 7. Exclusively on V81 Radio, Los Angeles. Kabayan, nahuhomesick ka ba? I-download na ang aming mobile app at mag-enjoy sa mga kantang Tatak Pinoy and feel like you're home. The V81 Radio mobile app, available in the App Store and Google Play Store.
V81 Radio mobile app.
Free now, free forever. Now back to Practical Magic, your practical mystic source. Only here on V81 Radio, Manila.
Hello, everyone. I am Reverend Reg, and we're talking about self-love here in Practical Magic, especially Valentine's Day is coming up, and a lot of us have plenty of things in our heads when it comes to self-love. But I'm now talking to Reverend Sheila, and I want to ask her what's her take on self-love, and when is self-love too much, and when is it just enough?
That's a big one too. When is it enough? What is self-love? Self-love is looking within. Looking within. And really get honest with yourself. When you talked about Valentine's Day, that's a big one there, is because a lot of people will go into, woe is me, I don't have anybody. That's the pain that they have inside, that they're alone. And so self-love is that you have to build your own self-love. You have to go deep within inside and really ask those questions. Why aren't I happy? What do I need to do to change? How can I come from love and not come from pain? And Valentine's Day is that if I don't have a lover, or if I don't get the flowers, if I don't get the chocolate, oh my God, I'm not loved. Well, that's great for people that want to express that, but really Valentine's Day should be every day, shouldn't it? Shouldn't you feel love every single day for everybody, but especially for yourself, So self-love is a big one. How do you do it? You do it one day at a time. It's just like how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And it's the growing self-love. It's the pain that you have inside can change if you go with inside and look within. Look at the things that doesn't make you happy anymore. Self-love
Yeah.
is very, it's easy to find, but it's a lot of work to do. And a lot of people say, how can you say that? Well, you know, you don't understand where I've been or whatever. Well, I do understand. It's because I've been there. I've been through the pain. So self-love is about changing things that you don't like about yourself and really, you know, honoring who you really are. Honor that person inside that God has made you so incredibly unique, so incredibly loving. And it's when you face the fear and you go through it, that is a triumph as a person. And that builds your self-esteem inside. It builds your trust that I can rely on myself. And the key is going within, because God is within inside. Do the work, and you will start to feel the self-love inside.
Thank you for sharing that, Reverend Sheila. And you talked about self-esteem. And apparently self-esteem for most people is actually a jargon. Can you please expand more on it?
Is HR good? What, higher self? Is
You mentioned about self-esteem, and for a lot of our viewers, self-esteem is a foreign concept.
Oh, absolutely. Is because they've lived their life for other people. They haven't gone within and find out what makes them happy.
Yes.
All right. And self-esteem and self-confidence is standing in your sacred truth. You know, standing behind, I'm not comfortable doing that. Having a voice, take a look at why don't you have a voice? You know, and it's really, they're stuck. They're stuck in their old beliefs and old behaviors that limit them from moving forward. And they use excuses, and their obstacles in their life. They use excuses to stay stuck is because it's the fear. They're afraid of moving forward because then they're not going to be loved. And the key is that you can never not be loved. God is so impotent. He's so important, and he's always there for you. And I say he, you know, because it's not a he or a she, but, you know, we're understanding of Jesus as a man. But it's really the entity of love is who we really are, whether it's male or female. It has no gender, but we have to put gender on it. So self-love is very important. If you don't have self-esteem, as far as self-confidence, it's hard to self-love yourself, is because you don't know who you are.
Yes, of course. And we know that in terms of defining ourselves, most people refer to the true version of yourself as someone they have seen as far as patterns are concerned. When people talk about true selves, they think this is the version of ourselves that they met many years ago. But what most people don't understand is that whether we like it or not, we're constantly going to evolve. So since it's something that's natural to us to evolve continuously, people say that if they don't recognize you anymore for the changes that they're seeing in you now, then they feel that you're somewhat an imposter because that's not the version of yourself that they met many years ago. What's your take on it?
Well, they're still staying with their own limiting beliefs. And for me, you know, I thank God I'm not the person I was before. And I take that as a big compliment now when people meet me that they haven't seen me for years, and they see that I'm not selfish and self-centered anymore, you know, and I really come from compassion by the things that I say and the things that I do. Self-love is that's where they see that I have changed. I'm not that person. And that gives me, that's where the gratitude comes in. A lot of people, they don't relate to you anymore. And sometimes you have to move on when you don't relate to those people, is because that's not where you're at anymore. And that kind of shows your self-confidence where you move forward and started to stand in your own power. You're standing in your own love. People that knew you before, they don't understand the things that you do. And that's okay. And they don't have to. The thing is that once you start to stand in your self-love, that you are in a different vibration. You are in a different, you emanate differently. right? And it really, it's about vibration. It's about lower and higher frequency. And some people will always be in that lower mindset, okay, because they have the fear of moving forward, but they have no desire to move forward, and that's okay too. And that's where you can just love them from afar. And we always call that detached with love. The people that do not want to change or do not accept you, or think that you should be doing different. It's about self-love and about detach with love. So you don't stop loving that person, but you also can't change their mindset because they're where they're at, and you have to just move forward, knowing that you're going the right direction.
Thank you for sharing, Reverend Sheila. And when I went to University of Metaphysics, I found out for myself that living your truest version of yourself actually means bringing out your full potential and not just staying stuck in your patterns. And going to the stretch of your full potential is actually quite a task. And we know it takes a lot of courage to get into the space where you're really wanting to be at your highest and best.
Yes.
And please share with us, Reverend Sheila, how you were able to actually take the necessary steps to move closer to that version of yourself where right now you're enjoying the more empowered version of you and someone who's able to do a lot for the rest of the community.
I went inside and I asked for guidance. I asked to show me the way. And I was just surviving, living in from one day to another. But I actually looked at the fear, and I had to walk through the fear. I had to walk through it. I had to go through it to find the other side. And I, as you know, and I've shared before, that it took many years to get here. Moving forward is the best thing that you can do. You start to live in your magnificence. You start to feel the divineness inside yourself. And that's where the courage comes in to move forward. And it's relating with other people, sharing what's really going on inside, and that's really God working inside you. Because as you share, other people start to share, and the right people will come into your life, and God will show you the way. And they always say, you got to bring the shovel. God will move the mountain, but you got to use the shovel. And there's so many of us out there that are here with love and compassion in our hearts and living their lives being vulnerable and being real, right? Taking those masks off and being who they are and moving forward. And that's what I had to do. I had to look at my limiting beliefs. In other words, I wasn't good enough, and say, no, I am good enough. And I need to take action. So I had to move forward. I had to face my fears.
Thank you for sharing that. And we both know from Marian Williamson, our deepest fear is not just about staying small, but actually becoming that more expanded version of ourselves. Someone who's actually very talented, very capable. And why do you think is it so difficult for a lot of people to accept the fact that there's more to them than what they're experiencing now?
Because then they're going to lose the love of their loved ones. They're not going to be loved. That's the fear. That if they step out of their role that they're supposed to play, okay, that they're not going to be loved anymore. That's the biggest fear. And what happens is when you do step out of that role and you become who you are, then you really get the love from them. When they start to wake up, or other people, you get the love. And sometimes you can't go to them. You can't get the love from them. You have to move forward. You have to live your life. And no matter what, and that's the hard part. It's the fear of losing the love of the people that you love the most.
Yes. I want to share, Reverend Sheila, what you just mentioned, because earlier, a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, sent me a message, and she was going to and fro whether or not to move to a new place. And I know that a lot of what my friend was feeling was coming from that place of uh, staying where she has to be in balance and harmony with the people she's with. And I'm sharing it anonymously. I'm not telling the name because it's just something that a lot of us had to deal with. I myself had to deal with that when I had to leave the family home, and at the same time be in the space deciding for myself, I'm going to leave because I believe I have enough creativity in me to pursue the things that I love to do. And it wasn't easy actually. And especially we talked about tradition earlier. One of the things that I had to deal with, Filipino children are expected to stay in the family home. At least a lot of parents expect their kids to stay in the family home and then take over whatever traditions they have in the family. And for me, I just really had to follow my heart. And a lot of people think that when you follow your heart and that you are joyful, you're being selfish. It's another big one.
That's a real big one. It's not about being selfish. It's about having self-love and realizing that they're just doing what they always did. And they live in fear because they're losing control. And it's like, that's a big one. That's a big one. It's a really big one. Traditions are very important. Yes, they are. But it's time to stand in who you really are, the child that God had made you. And sometimes it's hard decisions to move forward. The key is that you never lose that love, ever.
Yes.
God is always there. Always.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Reverend Sheila. And I know that you have a lot of activities coming up. I learned so much tonight, as I always do with our past interviews. And I loved how you openly talked about the things that was difficult for you to overcome many years ago. I didn't know about your alcoholic background, and that was amazing to hear, honestly, because I keep telling everyone, when we talk about things that are uncomfortable during the show, it's actually just realizing where is the baseline of the person, where are they coming from, what did they have to overcome, because whatever limitation that you perceive to have right now in your own life, when you begin to realize that other people are able to move mountains, and like what you mentioned earlier, you have to use the shovel as you move mountains, you have to do the work, you have to do
Absolutely.
your part.
You have to.
And
You've got to take responsibility for yourself.
yes, I think one of the most amazing things that you mentioned earlier, although it's cliche, as most people would say it, you have to do it one day at a time. A lot of people fear change because they don't have the patience to go deal with things one day at a time. And
That's
I know that it takes a lot of determination and perseverance, willpower to make it happen. What else do you want to add to that, Reverend Sheila, as a person who goes through that process of dealing with things one day at a time?
what I say is to look at yourself like a rose, all right? Not like an onion. They talk about the layers of the onion, that you have to peel the layers of the onion to move forward. And it does take time,
Yeah.
to deal with all those wounds and those beliefs that you've had. But I say, look at yourself as a rose. Look at yourself as a divine vessel used by God that is beautiful. And that rose sometimes has those burnt petals, especially when we talk about Valentine's Day, right?
Yeah.
About roses and stuff like that. But it's like it takes time. The roses takes a little bit of time to get bruised, but all you do is just take off that layer. Take off that layer, and deep down inside, it's wonderful, wonderful scent that's inside. But a lot of people do not want to take the time. They want it yesterday. And sometimes it doesn't happen that way. This part of your evolution, what is great now with this COVID and this whole shift of consciousness, meaning people are starting to become awakened to who they really are. And they're being forced to take the time to go within, to explore things that make them happy and do not make them happy. Yes, it's taken time. Look how much time it's taken this whole year, since COVID has been here. And look at all the changes that people have done. And we are not at the same mindset that we were back a year ago. The fear and stuff like that. We've realized that we can get through it. We have gotten through it. We've gotten stronger. And look at what we're doing now, just with the media, being able to, and not the media, but the actual social technology that we can. And I like to say something. They talk about social distancing. I like to call it physical distancing, not social distancing, because we are so connected. We can be connected globally, and we have been. Those are the things that are happening, and it didn't happen overnight. Look at it, what is how we have all evolved. So it does take time. It is one day at a time, unfortunately. But sometimes you have that aha moment that you hit up across the head, and then you finally are awakened. You finally realize, I do not have to live this way anymore. I can do differently. And once you put that type of vibrational thought out there into the consciousness field, that's when you wake up. That's then when things move forward. That's when things really move forward, and you can make a better life for yourself and be more joyful. And then you really start to have that self-confidence and feel the love that you have inside and realize that it was God.
Yes, thank you for sharing that, Reverend Sheila. Especially you talked about self-confidence, and we know that, in my country, for example, I see a lot of talented, hardworking, dedicated people. But a lot of us are actually afraid to step into the spotlight for fear of being called arrogant.
Yes. And selfish.
So, yes, and it takes a lot actually for someone to enjoy being in the spotlight, especially if you grew up with the Filipino traditional upbringing, because you've gotten used to feeling small and that we will always have to look after ourselves because people might perceive us to be arrogant, and we don't like it because people are actually used to humble people or people who are not going to accept compliments. Please talk about it more and why it's important to learn how to receive compliments graciously.
That's a good question. That's a good question. It's important is because you're important. It's important is because you're here for a reason. And being who you really are isn't being selfish. It's about self-love. And when you feel that you can't move forward, ask the reasons why. Ask the reasons why, and then take a look at it. That's where you go deep inside. That's where God comes back into play. And the questions you ask are very deep, but they can be very simple. If we just stop what you're doing and really take a look at your life. And it's not being selfish when you look inside. Yes, it's hard because the cultures, how you look and how you act. Just like, I'm going to relate it back to wearing makeup and not wearing makeup and having your hair a certain way and stuff like that. And people that know me, when I'm not on camera, I'm very raw. I'm very real. I don't wear makeup. Years ago, though, is that you had to look a certain part, or, oh my God, you can't be seen outside, without any makeup on. But when people have expectations about you, it's like you have expectations is because they have expectations. But your expectations should be really about you going inside, taking a look at that. And when we talk about the layers of the onion or the roses, all right, I want to go back to that, is because those are the things that no longer serve you. Going back, and they're limiting you, all right? Yes, other people are going to think you're being selfish. Other people think that you're not doing your part, what you're supposed to. But that's the role that they've been taught. So look at your role in life. And is your role in life to love, or is it to be controlled? It's about love. It's not about being controlled. It's about being who you really are. And you have to take those layers off. And sometimes it's really painful to do that. You have to look at your relationships and the roles that you play in it and your part in it. And nothing changes if nothing changes. If you keep doing that, you're going to get what you always got. And yes, traditions, it's hard, especially, different families. Now, I didn't come, wasn't brought up in the Philippines. But I did have very traditional roles that I had to play as a child. And that if I got out of those roles, this is what was going to happen to me. And it did happen to me. I was ostracized and all this other stuff is because I knew that there was more to life. And that's when I had to go within and really love myself more and then ooze out that vibration so that other people will see that. And because that's the only way that things are going to change and we're going to continue to evolve. That's what we do. We evolve. We become better people for that. And Reverend Reg, we talk about being vulnerable and actually coming out and talking about these things. This is what it's about. Many of us are become awakened to do this type of work. And it's important that we do that and talk about the fears, talk about what's keeping us stuck. All right. What's keeping us from not living our true identity as beautiful beings of light here to share our light with God and the people around and be the God that people need. Lead the way for other people. Shine your light brightly. Face your fears, have courage, and do it. And then you that's your purpose. That's what you're here to do, no matter what it is, no matter what lifestyle you live, no matter who you are, where you live, how you live, and it's about having the divine love inside to understand that, and then to put the compassion out for other people that are ignorant, they don't know, or they've been taught a certain way and they don't want to change. They can't change.
Yes.
I do hospice work. All right. And I'm going to relate this back to hospice work. I've done hospice work since in the 90s when I was in nursing school. And the biggest thing for people is the fear that they're not going to be loved, that God's not going to accept them, that they're going to go to hell, that they're going to burn in hell. And once they take off that blinder and they really come from their souls, that's when the love really comes in. And the healing that comes in, especially for families, the palliative care, it's not just the person that's getting ready to cross over, it's the palliative care. And once they get to the end of their life, it's not about, who they are, how they acted. It's about the love that they have inside and the time that they wish they had back so they could share that love. So it's about who you really are inside and live your life, face your fears, and let go of the pain, let go of the way that you've always thought. When somebody is getting ready to cross over, all they care about is love, the love for their family, the love for themselves, and of course, God is right there ready for us to transition over, and what we did in our lives God will not carry that over. We don't have to carry any guilt or feelings that we're unworthy of God's love because God is there always.
Yes. Thank you so much, Reverend Sheila. I learned so much again from our talk, and thank you so much for being so generous with your personal transformation. I know it takes a lot for someone to actually talk about their personal limitations and how they actually made the necessary transformation, took the necessary steps to move forward. And I trust that our viewers are also benefiting a lot, growing a lot as we keep doing these interviews. And I know as much as I want to prolong our conversation, we know that our time is up. So is there something that you want to share with our viewers as far as your schedule this week is concerned? Is there meditation or something that you want to invite them over?
Oh, absolutely. What I like to share is there's two different things that you can do, but I like to always think about being comfortable where you are, be in a meditative state where you can actually breathe in gratitude. And it's very easy to do. People think that meditation takes a long time to do, but it really isn't. And wherever you are, if you're starting to feel stuck or feel the pressure from other people, just stop. Just stop and breathe. And breathe in what I say to breathe in, like for 5 seconds, gratitude. And then breathe out compassion. So change your mindset today and shift your thinking into positive thinking. That's the other key. As I always say, when you start to have negative thoughts about anything, and it's mostly about ourselves, that we're not good enough, bad enough, we should do this. It's called the shoulda, wouldas, and couldas. Think about shifting your thoughts, all right? And it's very easy to do. When you hear yourself talk negative, go back in and say, I am positive. Say shift, right? Then you can go back to that breathing. Just go back and breathe in gratitude. Think of the things that you're very grateful for and breathe out compassion back out. And it will change anything that's going on in your life. Anything.
Thank you for sharing that, Reverend Sheila. And I really love it that you talked about something to do, because I know that it's one thing to get information from your head brain, but it's another thing to actually act on it. And I love being able to act on certain instructions, especially when it comes to shifting consciousness and the vibration that you're actually putting out in the consciousness field. So, aside from that, Reverend Sheila, uh, Michael, please flash the AOB.
What was that?
Michael, I was asking him to put our uh, announcement on board
Oh, there you
for
go.
some.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to thank Unity Philippines Spiritual Center, Reverend Florence Monzon, Milo Bondoc, for being one of the first few people to support me and the show. And next one, please. Of course, University of Metaphysics and University of Sedona, the International Metaphysical Ministry. Reverend Sheila, if you want to add anything about the university, please feel free to share.
Oh, I absolutely love the support of the University of Metaphysics. They are so loving. Dr. Master's teaching goes on and on and on. I could listen to him every day, all the time.
Yeah. And at the same time, for those of you who are interested, please flash the next slide, please. There's an ongoing scholarship for those of you who want to get into life coaching, mystical research, meditation, anything about consciousness. So the scholarship is only $1,290 if you're paying installment, and you only have to pay $90 for down payment and $25 for 48 months for installment. Or you can pay in full for a doctorate degree, and it's only $990. And it's going to save you $300. Or for other people who just want to make donations and support scholars in the university, you can actually do it by visiting the website. And next one, please. I also want to thank Dr. Anita Caprice, Dr. Diana Bihuni, Dr. Cindy Palos, Dr. Yolanda Dukes, and at the same time, Jennifer Hill, my brother Anthony Benton Brown, Andrew Whitburn, Reverend Adam Hayden, Dr. Stephen J. Cosmina, and Tene Cosmina, Dr. Kathleen Riley, my good friend Reverend Tina Brinkley Potts, and of course, last but not the least, next one, please. Arnel Caranto, our good friend from Earthan, and also Reverend Sheila Tillich. So that's all for now, everyone. And thank you for that, Michael. And happy birthday also to Michael. Belated happy birthday. Also, I want to thank Sir Charlie and Sir Rolly and my co-anchors in V81 Radio. So, to our viewers, there are so many shows that you can actually watch in V81 Radio, and there's actually V81 Radio TV. So, stay tuned for many exciting updates. I know, Reverend Sheila, we talked about so many things already, but what's the one practical magic tip that you want to leave with me and the rest of our viewers as we conclude the show?
Breathe. Breathe.
Awesome.
Just breathe.
Yes. Yeah. Fantastic. So we're actually going to do it and say a little prayer before we leave, especially it's the start of the week here for most of us. All right, so please close your eyes and take a deep breath in and out. And together, let's affirm the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is and all is well. Satnam, everyone. I am Reverend Reg, and I trust that you are all able to benefit from the amazing suggestions and sharing of Reverend Sheila, Tillich, and I particularly like about doing the, inhaling gratitude and exhaling compassion for ourselves and reaching out in compassion to others who are trying to understand our journey and doing the best they can to contribute to our growth, whether they are conscious of it or not. And remember to change our lives. It's you who's going to make the difference because you are the magic you've been waiting for.
Amen. Amen.
Satam, everyone, and have fun.
Consistently delivering the very best in metaphysics. Here in Practical Magic, your practical mystic source. Till next time, only here on V81 Radio, Manila. Tunog Pinoy, Tatak Pinoy, your all hits, all Pinoy digital radio station in South Manila. This is V81 Radio.
Ito ang paborito ng bawat Pilipino. Basta all hits, all Pinoy, panalo. Merong kwentong iyakan at tawanan. Kahit nasaan ka man, ito'y mapapakinggan.